Good morning, I'm Norman Sadeh with Carnegie Mellon University, and today I would like to talk about our design of a privacy infrastructure for the Internet of Things. This is worked together with a number of collaborators whose names are listed on this slide. Those of us who've got iPhones are probably, hopefully, familiar with the screens that are being shown here. These are the screens, and similar screens are available on Android phones. These are the screens that we use to manage the information that different apps we've downloaded over time on our phones have the ability to access. These are also sometimes called permission managers. And the beauty of these types of interfaces is that they're combining everything in one place. You just go to these interfaces, these permission managers, and you get to see all the apps you've downloaded over time and all the different permissions that these apps are requesting when it comes to accessing information such as your microphone, your contacts, your location, etc. But what about the Internet of Things? Here it's a very different situation. You don't control all the IoT technologies that are potentially going to be collecting data around you. You just don't have the same level of control that you had when you downloaded all these apps that you have today on your smartphone. And in fact, most of the time, you're not even aware of the presence of those IoT resources, whether it's the camera that's collecting footage about you, whether it's a location tracking system in a mall that's going to be looking at your whereabouts based on Bluetooth beacons or what have you. And so the state of the art today is basically signs like this one here. And obviously, if you're lucky enough, perhaps you will notice this sign. Many of us often do not even notice them. But even if you notice the sign, can you tell me whether or not this includes facial recognition? Can you tell me who this data is going to be shared with? Can you tell me for how long that footage is going to be retained? Can you tell me whether you can opt in or opt out? As it turns out, many of these pieces of information I've just gone over should in fact be disclosed under regulations such as GDPR or CCPA, except that there's no good mechanism for doing this. And so if you think about this a bit more, there are a couple of different options that you could potentially pursue. One would be to post QR codes in various places and hope that people see these QR codes and take the time to take snapshots of them and access more information as they connect to different websites. But this may not necessarily work. There are places that are potentially very large and where these signs might be missed. There are places where there's no obvious place where to post these signs. In some other places, you might have a ton of people who might all want to access these QR codes at the same time. And so while this could work, this also has potentially some disadvantages in some scenarios. Another option would be to inform you about nearby processes collecting your data based on your location, as being illustrated here. And that could work well too, except that you may also potentially not take your phone to see what's around you unless you get some kind of notification functionality. And so perhaps the best way to go about this is to try to effectively combine these two approaches. And this is the perspective that we've taken in this IoT privacy infrastructure that we've developed. But from a more global perspective, our objectives in developing this infrastructure were twofold. On the one hand, we wanted to make it very easy for people who deploy these IoT technologies, what we're going to be referring to as IoT resources. We wanted to make it very easy for them to publicize the presence of their resources and the data practices associated with these resources, such as what data is being collected, but also, for instance, what privacy options might be available to people who come near these resources. And so for that purpose, we've developed an IoT portal for resource owners, but also for device manufacturers. We want to make it easy for people who purchase their devices to advertise their data practices and their privacy options, and also for volunteer contributors. And together with this platform, this IoT portal that we've developed, we've also developed a mobile app that people, as they go about their regular whereabouts, can use to discover IoT resources collecting their data nearby, along with privacy options that these resources might be making available to you. And so this infrastructure that we're going to be talking about is really the combination of these two pieces of technology. the portal through which you can describe resources and start publicizing their presence and their data practices, and this mobile app that's going to enable you to discover IoT resources nearby, whether it's based on your location or by taking a snapshot of a QR code that has been placed by someone who deployed these technologies. The portal itself supports functionality that's intended to make it very easy for people to describe resources that they're deploying, whether it's a Ring doorbell at your home or whether it's that location tracking system that you might be deploying in a mall, or perhaps some kind of system that's going to rely on facial recognition to pop up coupons as you watch different items in stores at the mall. Obviously, there are many different types of scenarios out there. This very same portal is also intended to be used by device manufacturers. The manufacturer of that Ring doorbell might want to make it very easy again for people to publicize the presence of their Ring doorbell. You see today people putting signs in their lawn or potentially signs on their door. Why not make it possible for people to discover these Ring doorbells through their cell phone, for instance? And so rather than asking people to obviously read the entire privacy policy of these devices, why not have device manufacturers actually creating templates describing these resources, and then someone who purchases one of those devices gets to instantiate that template by just specifying where that Ring doorbell has been installed. So when it comes to publicizing the presence of these resources, we need to cater to a few different roles. You've got obviously the owners of these resources, like the person who purchased the Ring doorbell and installed it in their home. You've got also people who might just want to report the presence of a resource that they spotted, like let's say a camera at a traffic light or what have you. And so we really wanted to make it possible for these volunteer contributors to also participate and take advantage of our portal. And then we also wanted to recognize the fact that in many situations, you will have organizations that will want to centralize the management of many of these descriptions, whether it's that mall operator that we're talking about earlier, whether it's a corporation or someone who's managing a building or potentially a university or even a neighborhood. Many of these Ring doorbells today are organized also in terms of neighborhoods. And finally, obviously also device manufacturers, as I described earlier, who would want to publicize templates. And when it comes to users, right on the other side of this, we wanted to enable them to then take advantage of all these descriptions that are being publicized and discover very quickly and through a uniform interface again, just in the same manner as you would be able to do today with mobile apps on your smartphones, discover through that single interface nearby resources based, for instance, on the types of data that are being collected by these devices based on perhaps whether or not the data they collect is personally identifiable, as well as other attributes. And if you want to find out more about one of these devices near your location, you would want to be able to click on one of those pins and then get perhaps more information, such as finding out that in this particular area, there is in fact a deployment of those shot spotter acoustic devices that are being used to pinpoint the location of gunshots. And if you want to find out more, you would want through your mobile app to be able to also look at additional details about the practices of these resources, not just what data they collect, but also the purpose for that collection, retention time, who can access this data. And if these resources were to provide you also with some privacy options, ShotSpotter doesn't, but other resources such as the Bluetooth tracking device that is deployed in our lab and that's being illustrated here on this final screenshot, you would want to make these privacy options available to user through a screen where then they could engage with these privacy options and exercise choices that are being made available to them. So when you design an infrastructure like this one, with a platform and a portal to support resource owners and registry owners and device manufacturers, and when you want to support also lay users and enable them to discover all these IoT resources around us that collect our data, there are a number of challenges, obviously. I decided in this short presentation to just focus on 4 of them. The most obvious one is obviously that many of these users are lay users. You cannot expect every single user of this infrastructure to be a privacy professional. Occasionally, you might have privacy professionals using our platform, for instance, when it comes to describing templates. Yes, obviously, you would expect device manufacturers to rely on privacy professionals to build these templates and distribute them. But most of the time, the person deploying that Ring doorbell, or even the person that's going to be disclosing the presence of, for instance, a location tracking system in a mall, or a system using facial recognition to send coupons to people, that person will not be a privacy professional. And you would want to make it very easy for them to still be able to take advantage of this platform. We wanted to also make sure that this infrastructure was compatible with requirements of a variety of different regulations. We do not expect our users to all be present in the same jurisdiction. And so on the one hand, we wanted to be capable of supporting the requirements of regulations like GDPR or CCPA for that matter. But we certainly did not want to impose those requirements on everyone using our platform. And so this means effectively making a number of different options available to people who describe these resources without necessarily requiring that every one of these fields be actually populated for every single resource being advertised in our infrastructure. And then obviously we wanted to also support a rich set of data subject rights. You don't see too many of those today in an IoT context, but there are regulations like GDPR or like CCPA that truly require making choices available to users, that require that you obtain consent from that data subject before you start collecting, for instance, that video footage, and that also require people to be able to request that their data be deleted or request to receive a copy of their data. And so we wanted to be able to support a growing number of potential data subject rights. And then finally, in these sorts of environments where you're really enabling anyone out there to potentially describe the presence of an IoT resource and its data practices, including volunteer contributors, we wanted to obviously have mechanisms in place to discourage abuse. So let's quickly go over some of these challenges and briefly outline how some of these things are being handled. I've already talked about the use of device templates, for instance, and so we are starting obviously with a platform that already contains a number of templates that people can use to describe various types of commonly deployed devices so that they don't have to read themselves the privacy policy and figure out all the details. This includes also functionality, as I said, for device manufacturers who over time we hope will want to provide these templates directly on their own. We also provide functionality to encourage resource owners and volunteer contributors to publish, and this includes rich functionality to manage these resources, to request that they be published in registries, to review also what requests have been submitted to registries that you might be managing, to create your own templates, make those templates available to others, and so on. And then obviously, when you are going to be describing a new template, or you're going to create your own IoT resource, which some people do, we wanted to obviously make it possible for someone to describe all the relevant practices that they would want to disclose. And so for that reason, obviously, we realized very quickly that you should not expect these people to be privacy experts, as I said earlier. Instead, we've developed wizards that are going to basically do a lot of hand-holding, working people through the various steps involved in disclosing relevant practices, also disclosing where the resource is being deployed, what coverage that resource has, what privacy options it might be making available to users and the like, and supporting a number of different options through a fairly comprehensive set of drop-down menus without expecting people to be able to come up with these things on their own. And then when it comes to those users who are going to be discovering all these resources through their smartphones or their smartwatch, this is also supported on smartwatches, we wanted to enable people to specify what types of things they wanted to be notified about. As I think we all realize, there are billions of IoT devices already deployed out there. And if you were to be notified all the time about everything that's out there and every camera that you pass in front, you would find this to probably be extremely, extremely annoying. And so we're providing people with the ability to customize what they're going to be notified about, whether they want to be notified about the presence of resources every time, or perhaps just the first time they encounter or never, whether it's only personally identifiable information being collected that they want to be notified about. What type of data do they want to be notified about? Is it only visual data? Is it audio data? Those kinds of things are obviously very important if you want to enable people to customize these environments and ensure that they are informed just about those things that they care about. Jurisdiction agnostic, as I mentioned earlier, we want to support users in a variety of different jurisdictions. We do not want to impose on people jurisdictions that perhaps do not apply to them. We want to leave it to people to decide what they want to comply with and whether or not potentially they want to go beyond the requirements that might apply to the jurisdiction where they're deploying a resource. And so for those reasons, we've developed a fairly comprehensive set of options that enable people to comply with many of the requirements of these regulations, such as GDPR or CCPA. But at the same time, we're not requiring that every one of those fields be completed. Instead, many of these fields are optional. We leave it to people to decide which one of those they want to complete, but we make them accountable. And so how do we do that? Well, basically, we're telling people, look, if you're going to publish this resource, please confirm that you take responsibility for what you're publishing. Please confirm that this data is accurate. Please confirm that you understand the regulations under which you have to operate. And if you do, then go for it. We're just going to facilitate that process, but we're not going to take responsibility for that. And so finally, when it comes to supporting a wide range of rights, data subject rights, the key here is to obviously not try to manage these rights yourself, right? We do not control all these different devices that are out there. We're not in a position to actually implement choices that users would want to select, but we want to certainly facilitate the discovery of these choices and enable people to connect to those technologies that will enable them to specify their settings, their preferences, whether it's opt-in, whether it's opt-out, deletion, portability, or what have you. And so this is supported through basically an open collection of APIs, and these APIs then connect to various types of consent management platforms so that anyone who is interested in advertising an API has the ability to do so by specifying the URL and enabling them to also do third-party authentication so that they make sure, obviously, that those people who are exercising those rights are indeed who they claim to be. Discouraging abuse, we've already touched on that. So this includes obviously authenticating users. We support volunteer contributors. I think that they can add a lot of value in helping us populate this infrastructure, but we also expect them to take responsibility. We also support a highly decentralized publication mechanism where we expect registry owners, right, those mall operators, campus operators, neighborhood associations or homeowners. Those are people that will be effectively organizing many resources that are related to a given community, a given place. They're responsible for curating all these resources. They have the ability to impose their own policies about how they're going to be vetting those publication requests, what they're going to be vetting. They've got the ability to take these requests down, to turn down these requests, but also take down things that have been published if someone wanted to modify one of these resource descriptions and are proven to potentially be advertising information that's clearly not correct. As platform operators, we ourselves also have the ability to take down resources. So that's in a nutshell, a quick summary of the challenges that we've had to deal with. This platform, this infrastructure was released earlier this year. We got about 17,000 downloads in just the first week. Today, we're approaching about 200,000 IoT resources, and a new version of this infrastructure will be made available just around the time that you're going to be listening to this talk. So here's a quick video advertising our infrastructure.
Filled with technology that tracks more data about you, and most of the time you can't even see them. So that's why the Internet of Things Assistant is here. It will help you have greater privacy and control of data collected about you. The assistant lives on a vibrant yet familiar interface that uses a map to show nearby data collection. By tapping on a ping, you can easily learn more about a device and even control what data is collected. With our new notifications feature, you'll be notified of any devices that you come in contact with. You can even customize when and what you want to be notified for. Now, being notified about data collection has never been easier. The Internet of Things Assistant is available on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store now, and we hope to see you there.
And this concludes my presentation. So thank you very much, and feel free to check out our portal and download our apps.